Bryan Hummel here. It is May 1st, 2021. We just got probably 4 or 5 inches of rain over the past 3 days, pretty quick. We had 1.5 inches and then probably a little bit more than 1.5 inches earlier today. I'm trying to highlight a couple of things out here to turn flooding liabilities into groundwater assets. And you people see these things all the time. You know, this is a little microdetritus berm. I didn't put that there, but as water came, it locked all of these particles of wood together like a little mini beaver dam. And earlier today, all of this was flat water and all of that soaked into the ground. A bigger version of that is right here, and that's preventing water to go from where it used to go, which was right down the hill. So, and all my neighbors think this is super cool, so they stop and wave at me. So anyway, the water's coming here instead of right down the hill as it used to go. And this used to rush right down there, right through that water, right over the fence. And there was an erosional gully, like through solid rock. So this has been flowing that way for hundreds and hundreds of years. And now we're doing something to keep that water as high on the landscape as I possibly can, and let it really soak in and gravity irrigate anything that we put up on these berms. Oh, if you look at where the water's at, you can see that it's not soaking in right at the road infrastructure. So it's not gonna be doing anything damaging to the road, but it keeps the water and it lets it soak in over there. And this is gonna help revegetate the roadside. And honestly, vegetation along the roadside is one of the things that is the most beneficial for your road, because that helps slow the erosion, and you don't get the checking on the side of the your asphalt. So by having good vegetation, you're going to have a better road maintenance situation. Culvert pipe is a 24-inch diameter culvert pipe. All of this land, with all the sediments that are coming off that hill, this culvert had sort of left a lot of material, here, and that material did not let the water flow through the culvert. So the culvert pipe is more than half full of sediment. So when we dug this swale, we knew that we need to be below the level of the culvert pipe, and so that it's free flowing. So if you look at where the water level is on the culvert, the water level is not backing up into the culvert pipe as this is discharging. So basically there's always free flow of water through the culvert. There should not ever be any water backing up into it, and therefore the sediments should, this will help clean the culvert pipe out. But it doesn't just let the water rush off onto the property. You can see we've got a berm here that is catching this water. This one's relatively small, but I didn't want to hurt any of those trees back there. There was an old fence line, and we're basically just catching this water, and then we're going to direct it off that into another series of swales. The swale that catches water out of that 24-inch diameter culvert pipe, really all it's doing is bringing water in this direction. You can see there's still a little bit of flow coming down the hill and then flowing into a series that's much longer. Right where I'm standing, we sort of have this emergency spillway. So if anything happens and it doesn't flow in that direction the way that we want it to, water can escape here instead of building up and escaping over the swale. All of our spillways are at existing grade, so when the water escapes here, it's not flowing over any berm. This is the same solid ground that this tree's been growing in for 50 years. So there's not really much opportunity for erosion. Okay, so this is actually where the water, I'm standing about 3 feet higher than this little gully that was washing through. So this is one of the few places where we're stopping water above existing grade, but it's just, we had to figure out how to make this work. This spot's probably 3 feet deep because that's where the erosion was. The water would just come rushing through here and rushing right down the hill fast enough to make an erosive ditch. And actually, in a minute, I'm gonna stand at that fence and you can see the difference in how much soil that fence held back. So as the water is coming downhill, it's hitting this berm. Because this berm is above grade and this was not heavily packed in, there is a gentle flow. As it makes the swale plume down into the ground, it's also making a swale plume gently through the dam. And we get down to this pretty much solid rock, and the water can't soak in anymore. So instead of this water, all of that volume leaving in just a matter of seconds, this is probably going to seep for a couple of days, but not highly erosively. Now let me talk about the erosion. Before we put this swale system in, the water would come so fast through here, it would pick up debris, pick up sticks, and it would hit just a normal fence. I mean, this is a big gap for a fence, but it's probably at least a foot. It's backed up at least a foot of debris right up against the fence. So this fence with gaps that are, 6 inches by a foot held back enough debris to act like a silt fence. And that's the volume and velocity that the water used to hit this fence with. It just would rush off the hill. It would catch rocks and debris and sticks and basically turn this fence into a silt fence and hold back a tremendous amount of dirt. It is starting to recover, but I think it's going to recover much better now. We're going to get greenery and plant life growing in it, because now the water's not going to come in this torrent. It's going to come in a slow trickle, and we're going to get drips. I can see drips coming out of here. I can see drips coming off of that. So this whole area up here is super saturated, and in a way this is turning into a little spring. So I've got water up there in the hill country, and it's soaking down to a level where it can't soak any deeper, and it comes out as spring. So these would be your sort of your headwater springs, and then later on, as that water flows into the creek, and this creek flows into the Medina Lake. Medina Lake's a giant recharge feature. So instead of Medina Lake being hit by water all fast and it flowing over the spillway, potentially putting the spillway at risk, this water now soaks into the hills, and then it provides water to Medina Lake over, weeks and weeks instead of just a few minutes. So I'm standing here in an erosive gully that is emanating from a 14-inch diameter culvert pipe catching road runoff. And that road runoff used to go down the roadsides on a steep slope into a culvert pipe very quickly. That water would rush off, come down, come through this limestone hill, erode, knee-high erosion through this, and just barrel off of this property, go straight down there and into a creek, contributing to a flash flood. But now we have things where even if that water comes through here again, we catch it in this water feature, and the bigger water feature up at the top, which you can see right at Willow Springs and Bumpgate Road, that water catches all of that flow, and instead of it leaving the property in an erosive torrent, it soaks into the ground and provides this gentle passive irrigation, this gentle passive aquifer recharge, groundwater recharge. It helps irrigate the trees and the fruit trees and the pecan trees and the nut trees and the walnuts. And it really does help turn a flooding liability into a groundwater asset. This is the intersection of Willow Springs and Bumpgate Road. The water, all of the water from up that hill comes rushing down to this culvert pipe. All the water from Bumpgate Road on that uphill roadside comes rushing down to this culvert pipe. It's a 14-inch diameter culvert pipe. The water comes through here incredibly fast. Although I've never seen it full, I've seen it about half full. I also want to highlight these swales are totally full. They're overflowing the spillway. But if you look at my water level is not backing water up into the culvert pipe. That was a key feature, and that's where all of these orange, blue flags are. So wanted to make sure the spillway was lower than the bottommost portion of that culvert pipe. So anytime the water's flowing, the water's rushing out of here, and there's no opportunity to back up your infrastructure with sediment. So as you can see, it can be deep. It's about, dog deep water, 6 or 8 inches. The other thing I think is really cool is if you look at the holes that we drilled to plant plants in, the water in these is full, and the water never got this high. So really what it is this highlights that this is not just standing here, it's soaking into all of the surrounding land. And you can see it in a lot of the holes that we've dug that are now withstanding water. That's water that's soaked in here from the side. So this water's super saturating this whole area. It's going to super saturate that oak tree. It's going to super saturate that whole berm and all the trees that we planted. And those things are going to be also, not only we're mitigating flooding, but we're making this landscape tremendously more resilient to drought impacts. And what do we think is going to happen more in the future? We're going to have more floods. We're going to have bigger, stronger floods. We're going to have longer, more intense droughts. So it is wise to put more water into your groundwater bank account than it is to withdraw from that. And this is one of the ways to do that. One of the simplest, easiest ways to do that. And this technology is thousands of years old. Native Americans have been using this for thousands and thousands of years. Even in Australia, there's systems that are over 6,500 years old. So if we can start doing this across, you know, all sorts of ranches and farms throughout the United States, we can really turn flooding liabilities into agricultural abundance and groundwater assets. And we can do this for very little money. In fact, I just went through and was amazed at how many of the conservation practice standards that many people get money from, get cost share from the NRCS, they all cover this. So this can be turning into aquifer recharge, it can turn into agricultural abundance, and it can turn into carbon sequestration. And we can get some cost share, so the landowner doesn't have to put up 100% of the funds. They might only have to put up 50% of the funds, and that makes a big difference. And these are the types of conservation practices that are really beneficial for the land. Otherwise, you have conservation practices where people are trying to get the water off of their land faster, and our government can fund that too. And what that does is that helps make the flooding worse. So I think we should really be looking at how we're spending our money. Where do we want to invest? And I think it is wise to turn a flooding liability into a groundwater asset. So if you see the blue flags on both sides, when we came in with the laser level, just to to double and triple check what we were doing, we wanted to make sure that this water level never backed water up into the culvert pipe. So we made sure that the spillway, which is right over here, was at or below the bottom. It's like 1 inch lower than the bottom of that culvert pipe. So the if this is the culvert pipe and water finds its own level, the spillway is 1 inch lower than the bottom of the culvert. So if this is the bottom of the culvert and this is the spillway is just slightly lower. So that means water flows out of the culvert, fills this whole long line up about doggy deep, and then it overflows. And it overflows into another series of swale. But I've only seen this one overflow one time, and when it did, this next swale that we're going to go look at did not have any water in it. So I've just been I get super amped up anytime it rains. So as you can probably tell from this video and others, I've only seen that Willow Springs bioswale overflow one time, and when it did, this swale was not dug at all. So the water comes out, it flows over this totally undisturbed ground. And yeah, it's making little microdetritus berms. It's doing a little bit of erosion, but it's not going to erode. And then it's almost, you can see what we dug up with the auger, it's almost solid rock. So again, we're releasing the water into another swale on nearly solid rock. So the water comes down here and it fills this up. The holes are at the high water mark. So even when this thing gets totally full, these holes should be right at the high water mark, most of them. And you can also see some of them, I'm not seeing it now, but earlier there was actually standing water in some of these holes because I guess the water level was higher in the swale. But this spot had better soil. I'm excited to see what this works, and I'm just really excited to see for the first time ever it holding water. So this was built June of 2021, no, June of 2020, and this is the first time that we've had enough rain to put water in it. So we've been basically 11 months without substantial rain, and that's one of the reasons why these systems are so valuable, because they help keep the rain when you get it, because it might be another 11 months before we get substantial rain. And so when you get it, you want to soak it into the ground and let it basically gravity irrigate all of these plants. When this comes and fills up, so when that first swale fills up, goes over the spillway, starts filling this up, this is going to fill up and 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 get to a point where it overflows, basically a pipeline easement. So I told the pipeline people that we weren't going to do any digging at or near the pipeline. So we have a pipeline easement starting about here, and basically we didn't dig anywhere from here. But as we dug that swale out, we took some of that material we were digging out and we piled it up on the same contour line. So right now I'm probably a foot above grade, but this is 1 foot high and maybe 10 or 12 feet across. So It's a steep grade coming up, a steep grade going down. You can drive over this, you can mow over this. It's been driven over dozens and dozens of times, but the water can't escape. So the water will pond up here. It'll fill that swale up from the 14-inch diameter culvert pipe, and we're now 200 meters away from that culvert pipe. Instead of the water 200 meters from that culvert pipe, the water would already be in our little creek, adding to a flash flood all the way down Red Bluff Creek. So here, the water comes, it can't escape this, so it will get pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed over into this swale, and I've never seen that happen either. But if we can get another 2 or 3 inches in the next 2 or 3 days, we're gonna see this thing full. So the water will flow in and fill this up. You can see we have there's a lot more work to do because I want to get trees planted in all of these. And you don't have to drill these holes and plant trees, but I want to make sure I add a lot of stuff to really help this system solidify. Yeah. So this is the highest berm in the system. It is done with an excavator. I'll show you how to do it. And I'm also highlighting it because this has not been covered up with mulch. So the excavator sits on this side. It reaches out, it scoops into the ground and digs a swale below the existing grade, right? This is my existing grade, and that swale is below it. But what we dig out gets piled up on the downhill side. So it looks like you're storing water above grade, but you're really not. If this thing gets full, it's going to escape right here at grade way before it flows over this berm. And as we walk down, you can see what it looks like when we start covering it up. This had a little bit of more water in it earlier, but it's remarkable how quickly this soil just soaks this water up.